I know everybody here, but real quickly, that this wearing my plastic-free Delaware hat, and also sort of we are segueing to more of a zero waste mission. So we have, I guess, a program where we sometimes use the word zero waste first state for some of our programming, and I guess that's more along the lines of where we are today with this topic of tool libraries, just because when I only heard about these maybe a year or so ago, and I was just so excited because to me it seemed like a great idea. Um, and I know they've been in existence for many decades now. I think I read the first one started in the 1940s. Um, but so I did a quick Googling and found the one in Philly and the one in Baltimore. We're in between you. So I thought, hopefully we can come visit you maybe sometime soon, do a little field trip or whatever. But I thought a webinar just to sort of introduce the topic to our members would be a great way to get started, and just see if it's something that there might be interest in Wilmington in doing. And I'm really glad Serena is here. She's with the library program in Newcastle County, and Newcastle County runs the library programs, I guess most, if not all of them in one way or another in Newcastle County. So I think you'd make a great partner in one way, shape, or form, if we explore this idea. So great to have you here, Serena. And Tree, Stephanie, and Cheryl are all on the board of Plastic Free Delaware. So they are here. We usually get some other non-board members for our webinars, but hopefully a couple more will check in. But anyway, I just thought we'd have a nice informal conversation. Michael Freelick from West Philly Tool Library, and Jessa Wace from Station North Tool Library in Baltimore. I just thought, if you could give a little overview of how your libraries got started. And, I think Jess is going to give us a little digital tour. And then we can, maybe just sort of have a conversation about, how we might get started, or tips that you have for us in thinking about running one of these. So I don't know, Jessa, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I can jump right in. Hey, y'all, thank you so much for having me. Like Dee said, my name's Jessa, and I've been with the Station North Tool Library for a year and a half now. So I got a few months in before COVID hit, but I've been fascinated by lending libraries and the sharing economy for a while now. So yeah, the Tool Library is actually one of the older tool libraries in the country. So we were founded in 2013. And yeah, we started as just a lending library with like mostly donated tools. And then we've expanded to have our own wood shop that, yeah, I'm happy to show you all around maybe a bit later. But yeah, the Tool Library was founded by John and Piper. So two like passionate artists in the city who I think just felt like a natural need, where they would see their neighbors like having a need for tools and informally borrowing. And they just kind of had this natural thought that I think a lot of tool libraries have, which is just like, yeah, when we share things, we can have so much more. So naturally, there's a financial component of like, there's so many tools that maybe you only need for that one project. Maybe there's a storage issue in Baltimore. Like a lot of people have maybe smaller row houses, and you just can't even physically store all the tools you might want to use. So we think about those types of things. And after canvassing the neighborhood, I think the more they talked to people, the more confident they were that people would be really excited about this type of project. So we got lucky and got a startup grant that helped us like to pay the big bills of rent. And then definitely rely a lot on volunteer power to keep things running. So we have a team of around 40 volunteers that are both librarians, shop monitors, tool fixers. And right now we have 2 full-time staff, which we also are very proud of and feel very lucky, because a lot of tool libraries nationally and globally are 100% volunteer run. So I'm one of those 2 full-time staff. But yeah, I'll leave it there. That's kind of just like how we got here, how long we've been in Baltimore. Yeah, I can pass it to Michael.
Hey, so yeah, I'd be happy to talk a little bit about the start and maybe about how we run our things. We are very envious of Station North because their location is awesome and beautiful. They hosted, I think, the first international conference of lending libraries a number of years ago, and got to come down and see it. Dee, is it possible you can give me permission to share my
Oh,
screen and
yeah,
I can show you some
absolutely.
photos of
Yeah.
the tool library here? Um,
Yep. There you go.
Cool. So this is me, Michael Froelich. Our tool library was started in 2007. So it's strange,
That's not
because
that much younger.
right. And so I thought, so just in terms of like, how did we get started? This is how it happened. I had moved back to I used to live in Philadelphia. I moved to the West Coast. I was a member and user of the Berkeley, California Tool Library and the Temescal Tool Library in Oakland, California, both with libraries. Serena are part of their public library system. Came back here and thought we should have a tool library as well. And so I made up this flyer that you see on your screen and I handed it out at a farmer's market on 2 Saturdays in a row and said, if you want to join, if you want to make a tool library, come to a meeting on a Tuesday night or Wednesday night at a church that is in our neighborhood. And there were about 15 people that came to the meeting. We are a fiscally sponsored project of a much larger nonprofit called the Urban Affairs Coalition. We actually started down the road of seeing what it would be like to be part of the Philadelphia Free Library, which is our public library. And right in 2007, while we were doing this, the city of Philadelphia was going through a terrible financial budget crisis, and they were proposing to close half a dozen branch libraries. And so we decided, if the library system is going to get funded so much that they have to close branch libraries, that's too unstable for us, and we didn't want to be associated with it. Since then, the library system is a lot more financially stable, although it's still not open 7 days a week. But it might make more sense. But it made sense for us to be fiscally sponsored by a larger nonprofit, because they do all of our insurance, our payroll, our auditing, our financials, our everything. So we opened up in this little storefront here that you see back in 2007. The two big things that were really critical for us when we started is, number one is somehow like governance structure, like so that we didn't have to spend all of our like valuable volunteer energy on sort of like coming up with bylaws and contracts with ADP or whatever you do. And so like the fiscally sponsored project was like super beneficial to us. And then number two is we had a space. And Jessa mentioned this, that got the startup grant at Station North to pay for rent. So I just cold called a bunch of like real estate people and told them the idea. And luckily, one of them was like, yeah, I got an open space and yeah, you can use it for free. And so we stayed in his place for about 2.5 years before he moved us out. But luckily to another place. This is where the tool library is now. This is that building on the bottom. It looks a little bit different now, but we just moved into this warehouse. And he only charged us $500 a month in rent, which was super helpful. Later, he increased it to $600 a month, which was obviously far below market value. And so this is sort of a little party we had when we moved over into the new building. And I put the slide in because this kind of like tells you sort of how long we've been around, because so you see her there, that's her in this picture as well.
Oh,
So it's like 10 years ago. So this is what it looks like now, though. It's we have haven't looked at the numbers recently, but last time I looked at the numbers, there's like about 950 unique tool library members who borrow tools every year, and we loan out like between 15,000 and 20,000 different loans a year. We have classes, not as many classes as Station North does, and hopefully Jessica can talk about classes in a minute, but we have classes at the rec center or in church basements or partnering with nonprofits to do things like, how to repair your toilet and how do you repair your windows and how do you, repair your ceiling fans, like really like basic, and how to use power tools, like super, super basic DIY stuff. And then the other thing that's we're kind of like known for, I guess, in West Philly is people. Jessa mentioned that people donated tools to Station North. People donate tons and tons and tons and tons of tools to us. We can't use, either they're not like in good enough shape to add to our inventory, or they're just like, can only have like so many hammers. So we collect them all, and twice a year we have a tool sale, and the tool sale brings in about $2,000. So in terms of like financials and usage, Tool Library has a pretty small budget. We also rely heavily on volunteers, but our sort of annual cash budget, not counting in-kind in-kind volunteers, is about $45,000 per year. These days, we've kind of like reached the holy grail, as it were, or the golden grail, or the golden hoop, or whatever is the right thing to say here, where our membership fees, which like Station North is on a sliding scale, so ours starts at $20 a year and goes up and up and up. There's no maximum. Plus $1 per day per tool late fees is basically enough to sustain, plus the tool sales is enough to make our $45,000 a year. It wasn't that way in the beginning. In the beginning, we had to rely on grants, but now we're in a good place, I think. And yeah, so that's where we are now. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, well, thanks to you both. Jess, do you want to give us your little tour, and then we can just
let's
have a discussion?
Let's do it. Okay. Can you switch the host again to the Tool Library logo one?
To the Tool Library logo.
That was awesome to get a glimpse of your space, Michael. I definitely am hoping to make a trip there soon.
Yeah. I remember actually when John and Piper came by on their motorcycle, like a decade ago or something.
Oh my gosh.
They were like doing a tour of tool libraries.
And so are you paid staff, or is it 100% volunteer run?
We pay our tool librarians $15 an hour to staff it, and we're open.
Wow.
Oh, maybe I should have mentioned this actually. We started out with volunteer tool librarians, right? And then we got enough money together. We started paying our tool librarians to be open. We started out Saturday mornings, and then Tuesday and Thursday nights, and then we expanded Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights, and all day Saturdays, and then we expanded to Sundays. So as we've grown and we've gotten more money, we've just kept expanding our hours in our inventory.
Yeah. Wow. That's actually, I haven't heard of tool libraries paying librarians hourly wages. That's really interesting. Yeah, and definitely like when we bring on new volunteers, we ask for a pretty big commitment. So pre-COVID, we would ask for 3 shifts a month, and a shift is 3 hours. So I definitely have had the thought, like, that's almost a part-time job. Like you probably have to have a certain level of financial comfort to be able to designate that kind of time. So definitely like paying librarians is a way that you can get, people that maybe rely on that type of income more. So that's exciting. Yeah, why don't I can start the tour now. Let's do.
Can I ask how long you lend the tools out for when someone takes out a tool?
Yeah, so you automatically get the tool for 1 week, and then almost all the tools you can renew for a second week. And you only can't renew if it's a super high demand tool that another member is waiting on. So like weed whackers in the springtime, you only get for 1 week. But almost all of our tools, it's up to 2 weeks. before we have the same $1 a day late fee per tool. Okay. Did you give the, Dee, did you make the a host?
I shared, I made it so anyone can share the screen.
Okay.
So does that do it?
Yes. Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
I know I'm like supposed to be good at that kind of stuff. Awesome. Give me one sec. There we go. So this is from a few years ago. Sorry, I'm gonna try not to make you nauseous. But yeah, you'd walk through our door. I'm gonna go over here a little bit, and you'll have a friendly librarian. We have 2 librarians on staff at a time behind the front desk. Sometimes tool libraries will say, we're like a lending library for books, but for tools, but also we have books. So we have a bunch of DIY, home repair books. The library looks a bit different now, but the general layout is similar. We tend to put our bigger, heavier tools like compressors, you'll see bandsaws, drill presses, scroll saws close to the door, so you just don't have to carry it as much, is kind of how we chose that section. And then it's sorted generally by what you would use the tool for. So we have like a tiling section over here. Ladders are really popular. Drills, miter saws. There's a plumbing section over here. Lawn tools are sorry, that was probably too close. Lawn tools, super popular right now. Sometimes we think about tools like ladders as like the tool that gets someone new in the door, because a ladder is a really good example of you just need to reach that thing that's really high one time, and maybe you don't want to spend, $100 on a ladder. So that will bring you into our space, but then you come in and you're like, oh, I actually don't have a nice hammer drill. I actually don't have this. And it starts to kind of open your mind up to other tools that you can use. This is like our auto bike repair section. All of our small tools go in drawers. Some safety equipment. We just added, so during COVID, we pivoted a bit when everyone was, I think experimenting with like sewing their own masks and trying to get everyone masked up. We became this like center point for sewing machines. So we lent out, people donated a bunch of sewing machines. We lent out 20 to 30 machines. And then we were like the center point for a mask delivery. And we ended up, distributing over 5,000 masks to the community. So that was like a cool way we pivoted during COVID. But now this top shelf is like filled with sewing machines, which was a nice part of that. So yeah, after being in operation for 2 years, it was apparent really quickly that the need of our community wasn't just to have access to tools. People also needed knowledge on how to use those tools, but also workspace. So we joke about how, especially our first year, people would, borrow a miter saw, borrow 2 really long extension cords, and then start working on their project in our alley because they didn't have a space at home to use the tools. So that really was like proof to us that we could really benefit, our community could really benefit from a workspace. So after 2 years, we kind of negotiated with the building we rented from, and we started building out our woodshop area. So in addition to tool lending, we also have woodworking classes. I can talk more about classes in a second, but we also have open shop, so people can bring in their projects and work on them here. And you'll see we have pretty top of the line drill presses, band saws. We have a saw stop, table saw, router tables, all different sorts of things. And this is a little bit of an old rendering and it doesn't take you inside, but through these yellow doors, we have a crafts classroom where we teach craft classes. We definitely talk a lot about like, what does it mean to be a maker? It's not just woodworking. You can make lots of different things. So we teach like soap making, rope basket weaving, how to use a loom. We just started bringing in more repair classes. So we have like a phone repair where you can fix a broken iPhone. So we have the crafts classes, and then we also have home care classes, which you can even see behind me a bit. I don't know if it's probably blurry, but this is like an electrical class. We have plumbing, floor refinishing, tiling, and we try and make classes like as interactive as possible. So yeah, classes are a big way that the Station North Tool Library makes revenue. So we pre-COVID, our budget is very big because of full-time paid staff. So it's closer to $300,000 a year. And pre-COVID, we would make an earned revenue 70% of that budget. So that's membership, late fees, and classes as like the biggest drivers of that. And then the other 30% was supplemented with grants and individual donors. With COVID, our revenue has definitely gone down. We stopped running classes for a while. Even now, class capacity is super limited. So revenue went down and grants went up a bit. So we're a little closer to 50-50 right now. But yeah, we also have a knife room where you do more like metalworking. And then we have a knife making class in there as well. Yeah, I hope the virtual tour is useful so you can pretend you're kind of with us. But I can
Absolutely. Saves us from a trip down, although we would love to visit. So
yeah, how many square feet is that?
I was going to ask that, Cheryl, for your storage, the first room you showed us, how big is that room?
The first room, that's a good question.
Just approximately, yeah. All right, and Michael, do you know how many square feet you are?
Yeah, we're 1,000 square feet, but we have sort of like de jure use of an additional 1,000 feet because our landlord currently hasn't opened it. Do y'all know about this National Tool Library listserv? Because this was a topic.
I actually have joined it, but yeah,
okay. If you search in the archives, I remember it was pre-pandemic. There was a conversation about like what is the minimum size square foot needed, and I think people came in at around like 1,000 square feet was minimum. But I do remember, but Station North packs a ton of stuff into their space. They might be a little smaller than 1,000. Yeah.
I'll see if I can find the link.
Yeah, it's 800 square feet for the library, but then total we have 4,000 square feet. But storage is like the constant struggle of most tool libraries. And it really pains my heart when I have to turn down certain tools just because we don't have the space for it.
Do you do a sale like Philly does?
It's funny that Michael talked about that. We just put on the calendar our first tool sale ever. It's in like 2 Saturdays. It's going to be very like pay what you can, help us get rid of the stuff we can't use. So we'll see. I have no idea how much money it'll bring in, but I think it'll be a fun community event. We've never done a tool sale before.
So are any of the tools part of this new, or are they all donated, or how do you acquire them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know when we started, a lot were donated. We've gotten the luxury of being able to get more and more picky every year. So we say no to donations sometimes, or direct them to a community partner or another tool library. We just got a $4,000 worth donation from Stanley Black & Decker of like new hammer drills, new pressure washers, like all different sorts of things. So we definitely get some tool donations directly. And then we've gotten a couple small grants from like individual donors where we give, like, for example, we have floor refinishing tools, which are like a drum sander is almost $5,000. The edger is $3,000. So we kind of appeal to specific donors of like, this is something most people can't afford to rent from Home Depot. And it would be so cool if we could add this service. And sometimes that like specific, like your donation gives us this tool that will now be accessible to our entire community, can work well with individual donors too. So we get smaller grants of like $1,000, $5,000 that go to specific replenishing of tools.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Ours is
Good
the
question.
same. We buy we at this point we only buy power tools.
Totally.
But yeah, but because the hand tools come in like water.
And Michael, what's the upper end? You said that for some people you charge like a to be a member. What is your
Mhm.
current range?
All right, this is an important. This is probably this may be the most important thing I have to say on this on starting a tool library. Um, uh, when we first started our tool library, it was $20 flat, $20 for anybody to join, right? And then I remember that at some point we were like, let's make it sliding scale, $20 minimum, but going up. And we printed out a table on our counter that was like, you know, we're in a very low income neighborhood, and so we were like we put in sort of like this is the median household income in our neighborhood is X, and we sort of like judged it. And the next week our annual like membership was $38, and then you know a couple months later now our median annual membership is something like $45 or something. If you give people the ability to pay more while still maintaining sort of like the ability to pay less, people will pay more. Like Jessa's idea about sort of like making the tool sale pay what you can, you know, that people will pay like a lot for tools. Like we during our tool sales, we say, you know, a hand tool is a dollar a hand tool or more if you want. And on average, people pay more than just that dollar. But there's people that pay the dollar as well. Yeah.
And I think a big struggle for tool libraries all over is how do we get people who can afford to pay more to chip in what like they really can afford to chip in while maintaining accessibility for everyone. And most tool libraries will tell you like we trust our members to like self-report. Like no, I don't know any tool library that's like show us your income statement. But yeah, it's tricky. We even changed our language a bit to say we recommend at least $1,000 for every $1,000 of your income, while knowing that like yeah, making $50,000 as a single person versus having 3 kids is like a very different financial situation. So we definitely leave flexibility. We definitely give free memberships if someone can't afford. But right now our average is closer to $55 a year for the annual.
Serena, you have a question? You want to hop in?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
please. I was curious to know who fixes and maintains the equipment to keep it running or tune-ups or things like that.
That's a great question. So I would say our librarians' knowledge and expertise on tools varies dramatically. Some people join as a volunteer to learn more about tools. Some people joined because they renovated their whole house with the tools. We have kind of a different status of volunteers that we call tool fixers. And those are people that have been taking things apart and putting them back together, mostly since they were kids. We've been experimenting with COVID of having more like tool fixing open hours where we designate a time, you come in, we're trying to build more community around tool fixing because it's a lot more fun when it's like, hey, I checked out the electrical, here's what I learned, do you want to take a look? Because historically it was staff and maybe one tool fixer coming in, but we've really transitioned to seeing tool fixing as like just as legitimate of a way to volunteer as a librarian. But tools break every single week. We have, I won't show you, that wasn't in the tour, but we have a broken tool closet that we try and sort, and that our tool fixers know when they come, they go, oh, that's a new one, and they'll pull it out. And the goal is always to just get it back in circulation as much as possible. So we also have a budget for like tool parts, tool replacements, because that's also within, our values. If it's possible that we can fix it instead of throwing it away, we always want to lean into that. It's a great question. It's important. If you don't have tool fixers, you're gonna have too many broken tools.
For us, the tool librarians plus volunteers. Most of our volunteers are volunteering to repair tools.
That's awesome. How about liability issues? Have either of your tool libraries like had any issues? You know, I can see you sending weed whackers out and like praying they come back with everybody safe and no issues or whatever.
Weed whackers. Weed whackers are some of the safest tools.
Totally.
Okay, all right. I don't know.
Yeah.
Buzz
Chainsaw.
I'll
saws
tell you
or
what,
table
Yeah.
saws, that sort of thing.
we have insurance through our fiscal sponsor. Another reason why I highly recommend fiscal sponsorship. We pay about 10% of our revenue to them, and we get much, much, much more of that than that amount of benefit from them. And we've never had a claim. We have a waiver, but you know, my day job is as a legal aid lawyer. I know as well as anyone else that that waivers are not enforceable, really. But we have a waiver mostly just to sort of like make sure that people know what they're getting themselves into. And having said that, there's two tools that we don't lend by
Chainsaw.
policy. Chainsaws and this is one you guys do lend that we don't, and floor sanders. And we don't lend floor sanders for two reasons. Number one is we figure if you can afford to buy the pads, then you can afford to rent it. The pads are expensive, especially if you're going to be sanding a large area. But number two is that originally we had one, and like everyone who borrowed it used it inappropriately and had divots all over their all over their floors. Who were like,
Oh.
nope, we don't want to be liable for that.
It's so. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Jessa.
Oh, it's just like comical that those are the two tools you're highlighting, because after having 5 chainsaws come back broken over and over and over again, we just decided to stop having chainsaws. And then we're also having issues with our drum sanders, and we're on the fence about like requiring the floor refinishing class before you take it, which would be, we don't do that with any other tool. It's just like, it is giving us a headache. So I don't blame you all over in West Philly for making the call on those two tools.
So correlated to that, do you require any kind of PPE or, you know, helping people ensure safety standards before they use the tools?
We recommend it. At the end of the day, people are gonna, we recommend a lot of things that we can't actually enforce. Like we say, you know, you're the member, you're the only one who can use this tool. We know people are using the tool with their partner and their friend. And so our librarians know with certain tools, like if you're using an angle grinder with metal, our librarians know to be like, hey, like this is one you should really have eye protection on. So we'll verbally mention that, and we'll sometimes put the protective gear near the dangerous tool as like another visual reminder. But we don't require it. Yeah.
I guess if you go and buy one at Lowe's, that's on you too. So
Exactly.
Do you also loan some of the protective gear that might not be too germ, something that can be shared amongst people, like knee pads or something? Do you loan any? I can't think of any protective gear off the top of my head, but do you loan any?
Well, I also wondered
pads.
a related question, maybe Serena. I was wondering, do you sell some of that as a profit center as well? You could sell the kind of stuff that can't be loaned well. You could maybe sell to help make money.
I tell you what we do here. Yes, we loan out all sorts of protective equipment, and yes, we also, like Station North, put it right next to the tools that you probably should be used that go with it. We have two approaches to what we weirdly call consumables. The consumables are like sandpaper, right? We will sell, sandpaper and some others, limited type consumables. But the other thing, honestly, is we also just give tons of stuff away to our members. Like this, people will donate, huge boxes of screws and nails and all sorts of accoutrement, and we'll just say, take it.
Yeah. I would do that. If I have a lot left over from a project, I'm like, I don't want this anymore.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. I will say, you have to be, for us at least, we try and be a bit careful of not just accepting anything, because then it ends up becoming more work. So there's specific things our members know, like sandpaper is a really good example. But we don't love getting into the business of like selling consumables. We have an Ace Hardware, like pretty close by. So we'll often say things like, we provide the tool and you might need to get the specific consumable for your project. But same vibe. We have so we'll have our sanders is a good example. Under it's a little cubby that when you have extra, to just drop it there. So then if we have the right sandpaper, go ahead, grab it. We're not gonna, worry about charging you on it. And I think that helps with the culture of this isn't a place where you're always exchanging money for goods. It's more of I think it helps, be in line with our values, be in line with our culture, to be oh, if you have extra string from the weed whacker, of course we'll take that for the next member. Yeah.
And what do you do if someone doesn't return an item? Like if they just keep it, too long?
This is usually the first question. I'm surprised it's
yes,
taken us 30 minutes to get to this question.
You can tell Serena's the librarian.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what we do? We call their mom. Seriously. We require that you put references down on when you apply. And a huge percentage of people will put their parents down, even and I'm talking about or their relatives of some sort, and I'm not talking about 20-year-olds, right? I'm talking like older folks, and they'll put their relatives, right? Exactly, right? And so, and what we do is when they sign up, so we don't require a credit card, information or anything like that. That's because we know that can exclude a lot of people that we want to welcome into our tool library. But we require that while you're there and while you're signing up, you call. You put down, John Smith, and then you call John Smith and you give the phone over to the tool librarian, and the tool librarian asks a series of questions, and then calls the second person, and then the tool librarian asks a series of questions. It takes 5 minutes, and we know that if the tool librarian calls the check, they won't pick up their phone, but they get a call from their friend, they will pick up the phone. And so then when the tool is late, and I volunteer to do these calls sometimes, and I'm like, hi Serena, I'm calling about your friend Stephanie. Have you seen her lately? Do you know, this is the tool library. Remember we talked 2 years ago? Okay. Next time we see Stephanie, can you tell her that we really need that circular saw returned? Because there's other members that are waiting for it. And it gets returned. Now, from time to time, there are tools that just go missing. And sometimes they'll be returned, a year later, and we'll work out a deal so you don't have to pay $365 late fee. But it's such a small issue, to be perfectly honest, that it's not something which is worth getting hung up about.
Just out of curiosity, what are the questions that you ask the reference on the phone?
Would you trust this person? Would you loan your own tools to this person? How long have you known the person? And the tool library, sort of trusts that they're going to be returning the tool. Would you loan a tool to this person yourself?
What if they say no? Do you reject the membership?
That might have happened, but I don't know if somebody.
And if no one picks up, do you call it back or?
Keep calling, yeah.
That's
usually the member has a couple of people that they can list.
So I have another question, and please pardon me if it's a little too librarian-ish, but how do you maintain records of what tools you have and how you check them out to your membership? I mean, is it an Excel document?
Do you use My Turn?
No.
Jessa?
Oh yeah.
No? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, you answer this question first, and then I'll.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. So there's a software called My Turn, which was created with lending libraries in mind. Basically, you add a tool. Sorry, someone's using the shop. When you add a tool, you code it with a number. So the first tool ever, 0001, and so on and so forth. And then the member is looking through their tools. They get all the tools they need. They go up to the librarian. They give their name. And then the librarian goes, hey, could you read me some of the numbers off those tools? And then you just type in the numbers. It creates a cart for them. It automatically checks it out for a week. But yeah, it's a very intuitive, awesome software that most tool libraries, it seems, are using these days. And yeah, it does, it's not perfect. It does most of the
course not.
things we need it to do. We have to use another software, MindBody, for classes and open shop.
And
MindBody was
yoga.
created for yoga studios, and it is not as intuitive. But yeah, for the tool lending, this software works really well. So you like Sharpie on the tool, a specific number that correlates.
So we started before My Turn existed, and so we use this legacy proprietary thing. I shouldn't say thing. Software that's worked well for us for the last 13 or 14 years. We are, however, transitioning over to My Turn. We don't want to lose all of our data, and so the migration of old data has been difficult.
Yeah.
But My Turn, which was created by a tool librarian in Seattle, he understands how important this data is to us, and sort of is working with us on the migration.
I'm asking a tool library nerd question, but are you planning to do late fees and like all financial things in My Turn moving forward?
Yeah, because we currently have 3 systems. We have the system we use is called Tool Librarian. It was written by a volunteer at Southeast Portland Tool Library, and then we've got another open source sort of like money tracking, like point of sale system, and then we use Eventbrite for our classes.
Okay.
We'll probably continue using Eventbrite.
I maybe a question actually for Serena. I know I just recently heard that Newark is starting up a library of things. I don't know if you know anything about that.
I do.
Okay. And I just wondered how, like, a library of things is more than just tools, right? So I don't know if they're doing tools or just tools or more than tools or not tools. Do you know more about it?
We have, I just met this morning, we have an active statewide collection development team working on library of things, which can span lots of things. But tools I don't know about because it requires a maintenance that our librarians might not be able to keep up with. Like certain tool, I mean, like basic handheld tools we can keep up with, but if it requires, engineering skills, we wouldn't be able to keep up with that so well. But Newark, I see, has collected a lot of items and are now in the catalog, and Route 9 Library has a lot of games and toys that they're circulating. And I hear that when I forwarded your email, Dee sent me an email about today's webinar, and I forwarded it to the librarians that I know would be interested. And some Newcastle Public Library responded that they are developing a garden tool library with their local garden group, which I think is so exciting. I love seeing the garden groups partnering with the libraries on different programs and things. So I'm going to find out more about that. But again, I don't know. That's why I'm wondering who maintains the items. Because even me, like I have a shredder in my backyard, and I'm like, what happens if it breaks? Like, what am I going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. So, because I don't know how to fix it, whereas like, I can fix a book.
Right. Yeah, we also have a Fix-It fair twice a year where we get like a whole team of fixers. You can bring in appliances, tools, all sorts of things. I will say though, people with fixing experience love to volunteer. Like it's so fun. Like I would maybe see if you can like make an ask before assuming that there aren't local fixers. We have like young people, old grandpas come in and fix tools. Like it's really all different sorts of people that might be interested in fixing things for their community. And then one point I wanted to make is like, my dream is for the tool library to begin lending out more things. I get really, maybe it's like a personal interest, but like outdoors equipment, camping gear. It's just something that like is such an unnecessary barrier to like getting outside and being healthy. It's just storage.
Absolutely.
Like that's really I want to make the ask. We just don't have the space.
That's true.
But
That's true.
we love library of things. Yeah.
But like outdoor, some of those things, public libraries could, if with storage, but they could maintain, because keeping, maintenance of a bocce set is a lot easier or
Mhm.
that's not camping gear, but I'm thinking, outdoor
Yeah,
lawn games
outdoor
and things
gear.
like that.
And we partner with our local libraries for the Fix It Fair. So we've actually had them at like our central branch, Enoch Pratt.
Oh, that's great.
So I think there's natural partnerships between
Definitely.
different types of libraries.
So maybe this has happened at Station North, but a lot of existing organizations who have tools have essentially given the tools to us on long-term loan so that their members have a structure within which they can borrow them.
Oh.
So currently we've got all these tools from the Philadelphia Orchard Project. We've got all these tools from all these different like Friends of Park groups, because if they want to use the tools, it's easy to come to the tool library to borrow them. And we sort of like track them and all. The one thing that we ask is that if an organization wants to sort of provide the tools on long-term loan, then that the tools will not exclusively be for their members. So they're loaning them for like everybody to use, and that's worked out. That's worked out well. It is true though that when a Girl Scout group offered to provide like 50 tents and 50 sleeping bags to us, we have the space, but we said no after a lot of discussion because we didn't know how we would keep the sleeping bags clean.
Right.
And we were worried about, like, if you come to the tool library and you borrow a router, for example, and you get home and it turns out that the router blade is missing or something, no big deal. You just go back to the tool library and we're like, oh, sorry, we missed that. We should have caught that, right? If you borrow a tent and you're in the middle of the woods and you open it up and you realize that the poles are missing, that your weekend is devastated, right? And so we couldn't figure out a good system to open up every tent when it was returned and put it up basically to make sure. And that takes time, it takes like 15, maybe 20 minutes while the person's waiting there. And so for both of those items, we said no to, not without a lot of like consternation and angst. But we said no.
Well, hopefully people can go to their nearest REI and rent a tent there or something if they need. Jessa, you dropped something earlier, and I don't know if anyone else, I'm sure my fellow Plastic Free Delaware board members picked up on this, but you mentioned that you guys have offered classes for repairing iPhones. And so I'm wondering how that works, especially since a lot of that information seems to be sort of proprietary and closely held within like the Apple corporation or whatever.
Are you familiar with the like iFixit movement?
Oh yeah.
So we have someone that has like a close relationship with them. So we have like they'd actually donated like iFixit phone repair kits. I will say that you work on, which phone model is it? One of the older iPhone models, but the skills are supposed to kind of transfer to just like different digital repair. But yeah, our teacher works with iFixit, so they're all about like demystifying, debunking this idea that you can't fix your own Apple tech on your own. So he created a training. I'm pretty sure some of it is public. Like I know iFixit has different like video tutorials too. But it's nice when you're doing it for the first time that you're working on someone else's broken phone. And that's also a really good example. We were excited to not just offer the class, but then to have the kits ready to be lent out in the library. Because even just the magnetic mat that like keeps the parts on it and you can like label the parts. Yeah, it's like it's we love having more like repair oriented tools in the library.
That's fantastic. Cool.
I apologize if you brought this up earlier. I was called away for a little bit, but let's say I'm interested in getting a tool. Do I go to like the westphillytools.org to see what the listing of all the tools are? Or how do I find out what you have and if it's checked out?
Why don't you ask Jessa this question, because we're in the middle of transitioning from an old legacy sys software that used to be able to do this, and during the transition, we're not currently updating our tools available site. But there's an off-the-shelf software called MyTurn that tool libraries can use, and yeah, and if you go to the link that Jessa just posted, you'll see.
I know it didn't make it a link, but so yeah, we have our there it is. You can use that one. We have our inventory online. You can click it, you can search for the tool. And if we're open, you can always give us a call and like ask. A big part of tool library culture is like, maybe you know what the project is, but you don't know what tool you need. So talking to your librarian is a great way to talk about like the different pros of using different tools. But yeah, it's all online for us.
Another question is, let's say you get into a project and you realize it's over your head, which that probably happens. So do you have people that you can recommend doing the job, or what do you do in those situations? You know what I mean? Like I can't do this anymore. Who would you recommend? Can I hire somebody? Blah, blah, blah.
A bunch of tool library members created a Facebook group to like talk about their projects, and so that's where you find that out.
Gotcha.
You know, I do want to mention one last thing, because I see we're getting close to the end, which is, you know, one of the missions of the West Philly Tool Library, and I think lots of tool libraries as well, is kind of like an equity issue of like, and not just like sort of income equity, but racial equity. And so it's been really, really important for us to ensure that our tool library is serving the community in which we're in. Our neighborhood is primarily Black, with a median household income in the 30,000s, I think 36,000 or something. And when you start your tool library, which I hope you do, you may find, like us, that there's like different waves of people that join, right? The first wave are people who love libraries. They may not know how to use tools, or not really interested in tools, but they love the idea of libraries, and so they're just going to join. Then you'll have the wave of neighbors who sort of like live within a block or two. West Philly's large urban area, block or two. I think I recently mapped where our members are, and 1 out of 3 homes within a 5-block area of our tool library are or have been tool library members.
Wow.
And then if you don't do much more than that, if you don't sort of like do any type of like outreach or target or be conscientious about like, then that's basic, you know, you'll start getting people who like are doing these one-time projects and will come in, or they're, you know, they buy a house and they're sort of like fixing it up, or they're just curious or something. But it was really important for us to sort of like say that the tool library is to help people save their family homes in Philadelphia, especially in the neighborhood where the tool library is. It's, you know, rapidly gentrifying, and we know that sort of like if you don't fix your leaking, you know, toilet, you could damage your whole roof, and then damage your whole roof, and then, you know, the costs spiral outward. And so we have seen as part of our mission to ensure that we like evaluate every policy choice that we have and every sort of person that we hire and all that as like, how is this advancing our mission of saving family homes, ensuring that we're serving the neighborhood in which we're serving. And that often means, for example, that we partner with sort of like community organizations to offer classes like at their church, right? So that we come over to them, and we offer, we partner with groups, and we like give free tool library membership certificates, right? Which is free for us, really, to sort of like draw people in. And so I think it's important that and the Urban Affairs Coalition, which is our fiscal sponsor, is sort of like has a really strong and respected reputation of being active in communities of color, and they have got respect in communities of color that, you know, that goes back 70 years that the tool library didn't have. So I guess another sort of piece of advice I have is like have these equity questions sort of like front of mind when you're thinking through this. You know, it's the reasons why $20 is still our minimum. We still don't have credit cards, you know, requirements, et cetera, et cetera.
Can I ask a couple quick questions?
Wait,
One,
yep.
do you guys have a right to repair law?
We do not.
I don't think Pennsylvania's is in place yet either.
Okay, just wondering. And when we get something started off the ground, do you mind if we come and pick your brain more? Because this has been a great overview, but I'm sure there's going to be a trillion questions, and I'd really love to get this going. So can you be our mentors? I'd rather
Michael,
learn from your mistakes than make our own.
I just wondering, I love what you just said, Michael, and it makes me wonder, and Jessa, for you too, you both are in very urban environments. but like if most of your members and users are coming from a 4-block radius or whatever, Michael, like, I guess my question is like, do you know, how far do people come to get tools? And I would imagine if that's really true, then citing the library is critically important, from the equity issues you're talking about. But you know, I guess I just wonder like how far people really do come. And then for those libraries that you mentioned that are part of the county library system, like for Serena's perspective, like for the Library of Things, can you order a tool from the Newark
Yes.
Library and have it delivered to your local library and then pick it up there? You
Pretty-
guys might not do that, but maybe
Pretty much
those other-
everything. Or, you know, there's some things that wouldn't be able to transit, like a telescope. But if a library is circulating a telescope, somebody, like I know Laurel Public Library in the southernmost part of the state is, then someone in Newcastle County can drive to Laurel and pick it up. They're not prevented from checking it out, but it might not be able to go into transit because it's too delicate. But otherwise, most things, they can go through transit and, you know, be delivered within a week or less.
Michael, you
books.
mentioned Oakland partners with their county library system. I wonder, I mean, maybe we should get in touch with them if we go down that road to see how they function.
Yeah, and I said, but not just part of it. It's like the tool library is part of the Temescal branch of the library. Same with Berkeley, like it's part
Berkeley and
of the.
Oakland.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like several different models, right? One is that the tool library is, you know, a separate independent nonprofit on its own,
Yeah.
or it's part of the library. Toronto Tool Library is part of the library itself, or you're sort of a fiscally sponsored project of another, which has really worked out well for us. Or it's like an existing organization, like an existing community development corporation, or it's an existing nonprofit that does a whole host of different things that also decides as one of their programs they're going to have a tool library.
Jessa, what do you find? Are your users come from like similarly a smaller radius?
Yeah, we definitely have a big footprint in our surrounding area. I think we have people coming from all over Baltimore and even all over the state. I know like we have a few members from DC during COVID who have been like driving all the way from DC just because like they're doing big projects and it's worth the drive. But we pretty explicitly, kind of like Michael's talking about, prioritize Baltimore City residents in our policies. And just when we're making decisions, we're always wondering how that's going to impact our target area, which is people that couldn't afford tools if not for the tool library. So that's a really important piece for sure. Oh, I see some hands.
Can I ask a question? I got on a little late. I'm sorry. I'm Judy and in Wilmington. And Jessa, when I got on, you were showing the workspace, these big tables and talking about the square footage of the space. When is that space used? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. All of our services are a bit limited with COVID, but it's used every evening except Sunday evening and Friday evening for class. And then right now we have open shop Sundays during the day from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. So that's what it's like during like a typical business week, but we also have done community partnerships. Actually, how I found the tool library was doing youth programming in the space during the summer, during the day. So we're trying to activate it more during the day because typically it's used the most in every evening.
And what kind of classes are they?
Yeah, I talked a bit, intro to woodworking. We have a knife making class, home care, like plumbing and electrical, and crafts classes. So it's really all sorts.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. Do you know if anybody's partnering with any schools, in particular like middle schools that have shop equipment that's not used during the weekend?
I don't, but if you put that query out onto the National Tool Library listserv that Dee posted, people will answer that question.
Delaware in here, I don't know if you've contacted, but I know Barrel of Makers used to have an agreement with Brandywine School District about using some of their, I don't know, labs.
Culinary?
Not culinary, but some of the, you know, the wood shop tools and things. And I don't know what happened with that. And I know, but I can put you in contact with the Barrel of Makers who might know more about the agreement with Brandywine School District.
That'd be great, because we have schools that are located right in the middle of the community that could perhaps be providing some of this now before we get a space.
Right, especially over the summer,
Yeah.
school's
Yeah,
not in session.
exactly. Right.
Um,
And they have great equipment.
It is 1 o'clock. I'd love to respect Jessa's and Michael's time. So sometimes we carry on. We could probably carry on all afternoon, but want to make sure I don't want to keep you guys longer. Serena, I don't know if you would stick around for a second afterwards just to talk a little bit more. And any last questions before we let Jessa and Michael go, maybe? For the time. Hopefully we can come visit you guys. Would love to come visit you, do a field trip. Look up your open hours and see when we might schedule something, and then announce it and see who we can round up to come.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank
And it
Thank
doesn't
you
even have to
both
be
so
during,
much.
during open, just let us know.
Okay,
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you. But this has
It's
been,
awesome.
you guys have been so informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Awesome.
so much.
Thanks, y'all.
Happy to
Good
participate.
to see you,
See you
Michael.
now.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
See you, Jessa.
Bye-bye.